I'm here with former Ohio State Senator and the Bernie Sanders National Co-Chairman, Co-Chairperson, Nina Turner, great Nina Turner. I have so enjoyed talking with you, Nina Turner, over the last few months, and this is a real treat as well. The timing is perfect. Nina, are you there? There you are. All right. How are you? How are you doing after that debate? And given we have a little bit more than 4 weeks to go, how are your spirits?
My spirits are being tested, Mr. Secretary, for sure. They're being tested. That debate was something like I have never seen in my lifetime. I'm not sure for other people, but it was a cluster as far as I'm concerned.
It was a cluster. I mean, my wife uses the term. My wife said this morning, she said, that debate, the word that comes to mind is pornographic. I mean, it was so disgusting. You almost felt soiled after watching that. And it wasn't, we're not talking about a false equivalency here. It's not that Joe Biden was responsible for making that so pornographic. It was obviously Donald Trump in the most outrageous performance to date, I think.
Well, he was truly being himself. I mean, that's his modus operandi. That's how he acts in the world. Not shocked that he would act that way in the debate. We got glimpses of that in 2016, but the fact that he never self-corrected along the way, and it just really spun out of control. And Doc, you and I, we navigate the political space, but there are many people who dip in every now and then because they are in survival mode in their lives. And I've talked to some of those people, and they were themselves disgusted, because when people like you and I talk, we're in tune. I like to talk to people who just go about their lives. They're not necessarily in politics. And I talked to a millennial, for example, an African-American young man, and he just said that he wants no parts of either party. And so that we don't want to fall into that, because we know what happened in 2016 when the majority of eligible voters just decided we want no parts of this. We're not going to vote at all.
Yeah, now that really scares me to hear what you just said. Because if Donald Trump succeeds in turning people off so much that they turn off of politics, where they're already cynical and they finally say, well, that's it, I'm just not going to touch this. Well, then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? I mean, then Donald Trump wins. I mean, the way to make sure that this authoritarian fascist sociopath, and I'm not actually exaggerating. I mean, I really do think he's a profound, clear and present danger to this country. But the way to make sure that he is out of there is to vote and vote him out. I mean, how do we now, Senator, you are a progressive hero and leader. I like to think that I've certainly been something of a progressive, that people, at least, well, I'm not fishing for compliments, but how do I respond to particularly young people who say, why should I bother? I'll play devil's advocate. They would say to me, Joe Biden is just middle of the road. Why should I bother?
I think for somebody like you and me, we would say to that person, I'm going to accept what you're saying, because I don't believe that vote shaming works. I mean, that's for me. I just don't believe that you can talk down to people and tell them that they're wrong in how they feel. A lot of their feelings also, Doc, are rooted in real life examples. So it's not just a feeling. They also understand whether or not their material conditions have changed, or the material conditions of their parents or their grandparents or their neighbors or their friends. I mean, right now, the millennial generation and some of the Z's on the older end, and when we say young people, I mean, we're really talking 45 years and younger. Some people, maybe not in that 45-year category, but in their 30s, have had to move back home with their parents. So through their lived experience, their material conditions have not changed much. But to say to them, clearly, what you're feeling is real. But there is a way for us, the collective us, to take control. And you might not see the change immediately, but in a representative democracy, you get to voice your opinion through the vote. And that voting is only one part of the process. So what I say to people, Doc, I say, you mad as hell? Good. I still want you to go to vote. You disappointed about the two choices? Good. So am I. I still want you to get out there to vote. And then after you vote, that's only the first part of the process. We have to actively be engaged in our communities, not just on the federal level, but the state level. We got census, we got lines that are going to be redrawn, and also on your local level of government. So voting is the beginning. It is not the end. And you can get out there and we will fight like hell and hold people accountable. Because sometimes when we talk about voting, we don't say to the voter, you have a right and a responsibility to hold the people you elect to office responsible. And if they don't respond to you, then that's another conversation. But in this moment, we have two dragons to slay, but we got to slay neo-fascism first. Doc, and you and I talked about that a lot before we can even get to dealing with neoliberalism.
I think this is exactly right, and it's a very, very important point. Neo-fascism has got to go first. We've got to fight it. We've got to end it. We've got to get Trump out of office. We've got to get all his enablers and all of the vicious people around him out of office. We've got to take over the Senate. Yes, that is step number one. But that is only, as you said, step number one. Step number two is actually to fight neoliberalism and develop already developing this progressive tide, this great wave of progressive people, people of color, young people, women, others who are already beginning to take over political offices. We've got to make sure that that tide is big enough to push Joe Biden and the Joe Biden administration in the right direction. We can't just assume that the election is the end of it. You know, we get Donald Trump out and we can just then go back to sleep. No, it's the beginning. It's just the start.
That's right. And that because for just everyday people, neo-fascism is so big, not necessarily but the concept of that. And what you are masterful at is breaking down complex subjects so that everyday people can understand. So just for a millennial or for a working mom or dad, can we give them some real life examples of what fascism looks like and what it means to be somebody that is ready to fight against that first?
Well, I think, my definition of neo-fascism or Trump authoritarianism is that you actually lose what's left of our democracy. All right. At least we don't have much left. I mean, big corporations and big banks and very wealthy people have taken over a lot of our democracy, but at least we have the possibility still of making a robust democracy. At least we have the possibility of fighting systemic racism. At least we have the possibility of a Green New Deal, of fighting climate change. At least we have all of these possibilities in front of us. But if you actually allow neo-fascism and Donald Trumpism to have another 4 years and the Senate to continue to be under Mitch McConnell and all of those Trump enablers, then that window of opportunity, that small opportunity we have to take back our democracy and our economy is gone, is completely gone. And that's what scares me. I mean, Senator, I told you just a little while ago, I have been through a lot politically. I'm old enough. I've seen a lot. There have been some very hard times in this country. My first job in Washington was working with Robert F. Kennedy. I was an intern in his Senate office. I was not that far away from the place where he was murdered. He was assassinated. I was in California, that terrible 1968 primary. I was working to end the Vietnam War. One of my best friends in the world was murdered trying to register voters in Mississippi. I mean, there's been some very hard times. But I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, a couple of mornings ago, and I was really panicked. For the first time in my life, I thought, something? Our democracy, our very institutions of government, what makes it possible for us to have progressive change, it hasn't happened yet, but what makes it even possible is about to be extinguished if we don't mobilize right now. And so what the conversation you and I are having is so critically important. Talking to progressives, talking to young people, making sure that they are registered, that they vote, that they get other people to vote, that we have a tidal wave so that Donald Trump has no prayer of contesting this election and engaging in the kind of coup d'etat which he's been threatening to do.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Which is why he wants to stack the Supreme Court. The whole notion of not even honoring what Justice Ginsburg asked for is just unfathomable. So on one end, you pay your respects, and then on the other end, before she's even buried, you are talking about and actually acting upon trying to place another justice there. It is unacceptable, it's untenable, and that's people really are tired of people playing these political games. But the Trump administration, President Trump, and the folks around him, they are doing what they do best. And so what we're seeing, Doc, and I'm really resting in the words you said when you said the possibility, that is where we have to focus on what is possible in the short term while we fight for larger possibilities in the long term. And one of the things that I believe that have turned so many people off where they don't believe is that we have to continue to be those forces of nature long term too. Not that we have to wait forever, because we know that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said wait always means never. But just to implant and instill in people is that in this particular moment, in particular, like no other in modern history, you are needed. And all of the emotions that you bring to the ballot box is okay. And you are needed. And you have every right to hold the Biden-Harris administration 100% accountable, period. And or any administration, Doc, too, because we focus so much on federal. Federal is important. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, somebody who served on the state level of government, we're forgetting that lines are going to be drawn here pretty soon. And we don't hear ne'er word, as my grandmother would say, about state legislatures, attorney generals, secretaries of state, who's running on the local levels of government. It is all of those levers that if we get enough people out to vote in mass, young people, people of color, working class people from all backgrounds, that groundswell of change is going to happen, not just because of who's in the White House or who's in the Congress, but also because of who's in the governor's mansions, who's serving in state legislatures, and who's serving on the local levels of government. So I think we got the rest in the possibility. That's beautiful.
I think that the down ballot races have not been talked about enough. They are critical, and we're not just talking about the president, vice president, and the Senate and Congress. We're also talking about the state legislatures. Very, very critical. I mean, what's the situation? You are in Ohio. You've served as a senator in Ohio. I mean, when you look at Ohio right now, a key state in terms of the everything we're talking about, what do you see?
I mean, Ohio suffering, especially in my city. I live in Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, poverty is high, childhood poverty is high. We were an industrial state, as you know, and so the whole notion of those trade deals that hurt not only the generation that was old enough to work in those jobs, but also by extension their children. And a lot of that ripple effect, whether it's the auto industry, agriculture is very big in the great state of Ohio too. All of those things are indelibly linked. We're talking about what happened in Lordstown. President Trump made all of these promises to people across the country. My state alone, Doc, in 2016, we have 88 counties. 80 of the 88 counties voted for Mr. Trump. Think about that. And so the first debate was here in Cleveland, Ohio. Ohio matters, although the pundits are not necessarily talking about it as much, but it does matter. And we are certainly a flashpoint for the Midwest. So people need jobs. If they have children, they want to know that their children are going to have a better future than they're having. And that can't be promised right now. Clean air, clean water, clean food. I mean, Doc, we're talking about the wildfires that you're enduring in California, and by extension, the whole ecosystem. It's not just what's happening west. The whole ecosystem is tied to this. And so we need leaders who have a vision that will provide provision for the people. And for those of us who are among the people, it is our responsibility to not only vote, but to stay actively engaged and make our demands known. But first things first, we can do all of that.
Now, Senator, when young people especially say to you, well, how do I make my demands known? In other words, I've been on the streets, I've been protesting, I've been writing letters, I've been making telephone calls, I've been doing all kinds of and what they say to me is, I've been doing all of these things, but I just don't have a sense that I'm having any effect. What do you say back? I'll tell you what I say back, but you tell me what you say back.
I tell them, not that I'm a farm girl, because I am a city girl. So hopefully, if we got some farmers on here, don't tap me too hard. But it's the cultivation moment that I want them to be in. It's like planting a seed, any kind of seed. You don't have to be a farmer, just plant the seed. You got to cultivate that seed. And once you start cultivating it with the right sunshine, the right amount of water, the right temperature, then you begin to see growth. And then you keep cultivating it till it grows and grows and grows. That is how I ask young people to look at not just this moment, but any moment when you are in a fight of this magnitude. You're not going to see your return overnight. It shouldn't take forever, but you're not going to see it overnight. But it is that cultivation, and that we all have a role to play, Doc. All have a role to play. So some people are out there protesting. Other folks are running for office. Other folks are behind the scenes. Some people are advising those people who run for office. If all of us are playing our role, or all of us are being our piece to the whole puzzle, that is how change is ignited. That's how it happens.
That's absolutely right. And you were talking a little while ago about patience, and if we just sit back and say, okay, well, I'm going to be patient, that's nothing. Nothing happens. But at the same time, if we fight, but we know that the fight is going to be a long time. In other words, we know that there's not going to be change overnight. But if we keep mobilizing, and if we keep organizing, and we keep fighting, and we keep fighting for years, and it might take a whole lifetime, it doesn't matter, because the fight is necessary, and the fight is almost the critical prerequisite of any fundamental and important social change. I've served in Washington. I've been in a cabinet position in an administration under Bill Clinton, and sometimes I would feel pretty, well, let's be clear, I felt kind of discouraged because, I remember the day that Bill Clinton signed a law that ended welfare and I thought condemned millions of poor people to real insecurity and poverty. And I was right. Turned out I was right. But I was very discouraged. I said to myself, well, where are people? Because one thing that I learned in Washington is that you can have the best people in Washington in office. It doesn't matter. If there aren't good people outside Washington who are pushing, who are demanding, who are fighting, who are organizing and mobilizing continuously, then inside Washington, you're not going to get the kind of change you want. The fight is the thing. The fight is critical. This is why getting Donald Trump out of office and getting a new Senate and getting good people on the down-ballot offices in state offices is critically important. But as you keep saying, it is just the beginning of the fight. It's just the beginning of the process.
That's it, Doc. And it is, our killer Michael Render, a dear friend of mine, he said, plot, plan, strategize, organize, mobilize, and capitalize. And that's it. It's a cycle and it never ends. I remember in 2014, I was running for Secretary of State in the great state of Ohio against one of the worst secretaries of state in the entire country, on top of a Black person that never won a constitutional office in the great state of Ohio. Unfortunately, that is true for most of the states in this nation, at least a Democrat. Let me just say that. And I was feeling really low because I just couldn't believe that somebody who took the oath of office as a Secretary of State would then suppress the vote. And we see a lot of that depress the vote happening at the hands of Republican governors, whether it's the great state of Florida, where they passed the Second Chance Act, but then they compound that and make it a modern day poll tax, to other states across this country when legislatures control, or secretaries of state. And that's why these other offices are important. But my point on our point, where we're trying to get people to see and know none of this stuff should take forever. And it's okay for people to be mad as hell. I get it. We get it. The loss of jobs, the economy, the corporatist state that we are in, both Republicans and Democrats answer to corporatists. And what I love about us, Dr. Reich, we tell the truth about both parties. This is a humanitarian proposition that we're talking about today. But I'll never forget a reverend who I was having a meeting with him, and he was feeling my pain. Dr. Otis Moss Jr., he said, Senator, the struggle is forever. So we are forever in the struggle. And that goes to the point you're making about the fight. So I want people to take Dr. Otis Moss Jr.'s words that the struggle is forever, meaning we're always going to have something in the justice lane that we're going to have to either fight for or against. The struggle is forever. And then we, whether it's your generation, Doc, my generation, the generation after me, and even the generation after that, the struggle is forever. So we collectively are forever in the struggle. And that is one way to look at the lens. We're going to have some short-term gains, and then we're going to have some things that we got to fight for in the long run. And all of those things fit together.
Well, the struggle is forever. I love that phrase. I'm going to write that, put it right over my desk, because when I heard Donald Trump 2 nights ago actually praise, or at least refuse to condemn, and quietly, with a wink and a nod, praise this kind of right-wing white supremacist group, and indirectly elevate and legitimize white supremacy in this country, I thought I was hearing things. I mean, I thought this can't be a president of the United States saying what he just said, doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Well, the struggle is forever. I just hope that people of all races and ethnicities and backgrounds just are so furious at his peddling of hate, which is all he has left in this campaign. I mean, he blew it on COVID. He blew it on the economy. He's blown it again and again on everything that people care about. The only thing he has left to run on is hate. And I think that good people of this country, and most people I meet in this country, are good people, whether they call themselves Republicans or Democrats or conservatives or liberals or progressives, whatever. Most people are good people. I hope that people say to themselves, you know something, we are united against hate. We are not going to tolerate this. We are going to rebuke this. We are going to renounce this. And we're going to do it starting with the ballot box and starting with voting in bigger numbers than we've ever seen against an incumbent president.
Oh my God, Doc. And you saying, I mean, what he said to the Proud Boys, there's a nurse in Chicago. Her name is Martez Chisholm, and she shared a story on Facebook, Doc. She said last night, because she was so hurt by what the president did, to your point, last night was a very horrific night for me when I heard Trump say, stand back and stand by. That's what they did on January 11th, 1966, to my great-grandmother. They stood back and stood by and waited on her to return back from her public hearing with Senator Robert Kennedy in Jackson, Mississippi. All she wanted to do was vote. She was ambushed. Trump is playing with fire. The rest of that story, Doc, is that her great-grandmother went to testify about voting in African Americans and people who understand history, and some elders who may be listening who lived through that moment. You and I were talking about your experiences in 1968. She went to testify about the importance of voting and how Black folks were not being allowed to vote in this country. And they felt that immensely in the South. Well, white supremacists, when she left that hearing, I think it was 2 other people in the car with her, as Miss Chisholm has told me that story over and over again. They ran them off the road, and her great-grandmother was decapitated for the crime of going to a hearing to testify about the power of the ballot box and how African Americans should not be treated like second-class citizens. That this stuff is real and it is painful, and it's not a long time ago. That's not 1966 is not a long time ago on the spectrum of history. So if people are not moved by anything else that you and I have said here today, hopefully Miss Chisholm's story about her great-grandmother and how she had a visceral response to what President Trump just said a couple of days ago will move people in some kind of way. We must act. Bring all your emotions with you, but we must act.
Bring all your emotions with you. Well, you know, I've gotten in touch recently with a part of my own personal history. You're talking about your great-grandmother. You I, in 1964, discovered that a fellow who, when I was a little kid, protected me from the bullies. He was about 5 years older. His name was Mickey. I discovered in 1964, I had lost contact with him. I was at college. He, in 1964, was with two other civil rights workers, Cheney and Goodman. His name was Michael Schwerner. He was tortured, and the three of them were brutally murdered by Ku Klux Klanmen, the sheriff in Neshoba County, Mississippi. Their bodies were found in a kind of dirt grave that had been dug to hide them. And when I discovered that the person who had protected me as a kid, because I was always very short, who had protected me from the bullies, himself had been tortured and killed by the real bullies of society, the real bullies, the white supremacist bullies of society. Yeah. It changed my life. It made me see bullying in all its forms. Racist bullying, bullying that is economic bullying, bullying having to do with power, political power, having to do with abuse, having to do really with the kind of bullying we saw Donald Trump use, or at least attempt to use, just 2 nights ago. That's the bullying that is the ugly side of America. That's the bullying that all of us have to join together to stop. And we've got to make this a society in which bullying is unacceptable. Economic bullying, political bullying, racist bullying, any kind of bullying that makes and preys upon and exploits vulnerable people. We've got to empower everyone. That's what our society is all about. That's what a democracy should be all about. That's what an economy also ought to be all about. So maybe something good will come out of all of this, but I just want to tell you, Senator Nina Turner, you were one of my heroes. You continue to do great work. Thank you for all of the work you are doing. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for what you did with Bernie Sanders, who's one of my best friends in the world. And I just want you to continue to do what you're doing, and let's stay in touch, shall we?
Amen, Doc. And back to you as well. You have done so much for us over the years. You've been in this for the progressive movement and how you use not only your cachet and your intellect to really break down these issues so that everyday people in this nation will understand what is at stake, not only in this election, but you really are hard charging against an economy that is immoral right now. This excessive greed. We're not talking about wealth and people living well. We're talking about excessive greed. We owe you a great debt of gratitude for being in that space, for being that piece of the puzzle. And Doc, we will definitely stay in touch. And I am just honored to join you this afternoon.
Well, Senator, and we have your podcast today,
yes,
right? I wanted to mention that. I wanted to give you a plug for your podcast. Give us just in the 1 minute we have remaining. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and what we are doing. You and I are doing today.
Yes, we are. Today, please go to ninaturner.com or wherever you get your podcast. Hello, somebody. Dr. Robert Reich and myself, we're talking the talk about democracy and what it means. Let's do this thing. And you will get another dose of us talking about the issues and how we solve them. So hello, somebody, ninaturner.com. Come on and take this journey with us. Thank you, Doc, so much for that. It came out today and I'm so excited.
You take care of yourself. Be well. God bless you.
God bless you as well.